of agape, and I pray that we will unite and form a holy posse and do this thing for the newborn king, giving hope to the meek through the door he brings.
Good deal. Tell me why is it so hard to keep it real when we all already know Jesus Christ suffered for the Bible to be so. What's the deal? Tell me why is it so hard to keep it real? Let's put our faith to work and show this world the church. Yeah.
Just get along, maybe not in the world cause it's wicked and wrong, but in Christ we have life.
All right.
So let's live it. Freely we've been given it, so freely let's give it. A sharp this nation while they...
All right. Why is it so hard to keep it real, as our introductory song says? But we here at Truly Foundation, we are all about keeping it real. And even the foundation of this spiritual masterpiece called A Course in Miracles has its foundation in establishing that which is real versus that which is not real. And so, why is it so hard to keep it real? It is not hard to keep it real. It is easier to be distracted by that which is not real. And so there has to be a vigilance and a diligence and a discipline about our life. And so here we are today, and I'm so happy to be your temporary guide, your temporary host, your Course in Miracle coach temporarily. And it is my job to point you to the internal teacher that is a part of your reality. All of us have the same internal teacher that is a part of our adventurous reality. And so that which is permanent is what I point you towards, your permanence. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Again, my name is Oliver Blue, and we are embarking on but another day of this journey of transformation. Today's going to be a continuation of lesson 194, which we started on yesterday and didn't quite finish. So we're going to, how about we just name this one? How about we just name this particular lesson Workbook lesson, A Course in Miracle Workbook lesson 194 part 2. How about that? But we will finish today. And so I'm delighted again to be here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying on this journey. And if you're listening to us for the first time, these workbook lessons are taken out of the spiritual book named A Course in Miracles. And these workbook lessons are designed to help us bring our minds back into alignment with their original state of being, which is the mind that is the one mind that we all share, which we use terms such as the mind of Christ, or the thoughts of God, or the mind of God. And it's not as important what we call it, but what is important that we realize that our minds appear to be split. And a part of our mind has gone prodigal. Going prodigal means what they have left home, like the story of the prodigal son. Left home searching for something, that it thought was outside of the completion of the home that was made for him. And we all, as a human species, collectively, as minds, as one mind, we entertained an idea that there was something outside of God, that was something outside of our perfection, that was something outside of our fullness, there was something outside of the completion and the wholeness that we were created in. Somehow, somewhere, that idea creeped into the mind of God's creation. And it was entertained just for a split moment. But it's impossible. Here's the dilemma. It's impossible for that which God is, which is perfection, that which God creates, which is perfection. It is impossible for it to be altered or changed or impacted in any way. Because to say that, it's to say that there is something other than God or greater than God. And there's not. There's something opposite to God. And in reality, there is not. And so what happened in that moment, in that tiny tick of time, that the Course call it, is a tiny tick of time where this tiny mad idea of separation entered into humanity. And the Course says that in that tiny tick of time, in that same instant, the answer to that impossible idea was answered with what the Course calls the atonement, which is, and basically the answer, which is always and still remain the answer to anything that would seemingly make a threat to reality or a threat to God or be in opposition to God. The answer remained the same. God is, and there is nothing else. Or as the Course says, in that moment, the response to the tiny mad idea was that there is no tiny mad idea and nothing happened. That humanity remains the same. Heaven remains the same. God remains the same. That which God has created remained undefiled or unaltered by any such mad idea. So the mad idea in and of itself fell into its own madness, which we call sleep, or we may label it as it fell into only thing that it could fall into. Is it a vain imagining, a dream, a hallucination, a wild imagining? And in that wild imagining, in that dream, there was a world created, a world of perception that is totally opposite to what reality is. It's unreality. That's why even our own nightly dreams, they are unrealities. You can't really put any stock in a mind that would create objects of experiences and scenarios and plots and schemes. And most of these dreams are based on what? Fear. And so this apparent separation idea not only dreamed, but it began to have nightmares of separation, and it created a world that was supposedly an attack on God or an attack on reality. And in this world, it only made its purpose and its communication to be that of separation, that of multiplicity, that would totally was opposite or totally would oppose to God. And then it included things like in this world of separation that was dreamed in the mind that appeared to be split. Hang on a second. I can't find what I'm looking for, but in this world, or the dream of separation, was a world created, a world of perception, as the Course says. It says, a world of perception, on the other hand, is the world of time and change. It's going to describe the experience that we're having in this world. This is that world that was dreamed up. This is the world that was made to be a substitute for reality. We call it a world of perception. In other words, it's a world of interpretation. It's not a world of facts like heaven is. It's not a world that of perfection like God is. So you would have to come to the conclusion that this world that was made was not made by God, but it was made out of a mind that believed that it's separated from God and went out on its own, like the prodigal son who went out to make a life on his own and rejected the life that was given unto him. And that's what we did collectively. And so this world that was created it was the world of perception. Whereas in reality, there is no perception. That's just the knowing. It's a world of knowledge where there's no opposites. It says a world of perception was made. It is a world of time and change. In heaven, there is no time. There is no space. There is no object. There's no objective experience. But here, we made a world of time and change, of beginnings and endings. Everything in this world has a beginning and has an ending. But in the real world, in reality, in God's reality, which is where we were created, there is no beginning, there's no end. There is no beginning you cannot find the beginning of yourself. You cannot find the end of yourself in God. But in a dream of separation, you can say, hey, yeah, this was my body born day. And this is my body death day. Everyone gets one of those in the dream, in that which is temporal. But in that which is reality, there is no beginning or end to you. There is no time and space. There's no way to measure. We were born in a boundless, endless, unlimited field of awareness. But here, that which was made, it has no beginning and no end. Doesn't that sound like this world that we're in? He says, it is based on interpretation. Everything in this world, it's based on perception, which is interpretation, where we interpret what we see, we interpret what we feel, we interpret what we hear. Everything is, everybody has a different opinion. So how can you find the truth in a world of interpretation, a world of perception? There's so much instability. What is the truth? And that's all behind the plan to keep us off balanced. It says in this world that we made, it is based on interpretation and not on facts. Our reality, who we really are, our timeless and formless self, who you were when you deconstruct all the content of your life, all the timeline, all your personal history, when you deconstruct and go beyond the point where there was an identification of a body in your mother's womb, when you go back beyond, before time and space, you existed. And that's a fact. And it never changes. And it never can be changed. But the mere idea of being born in a temporary body and dying in a matter of time, a short time, that's not a fact. How do you interpret that? What do you call that? Is that really life? It says, it is the world of birth and death. In this world that we made, in the world that was made from a mind that believed that it split off from its creator, it created birth and death. And we know that God is eternal. And so how could God create something that has birth and death in it? It's not possible. It would be like planting an orange seed and getting an apple. It's not possible. The law of God says that everything produces after its own kind, even God. So what God produced, what God created was you and me after his own kind. And so he wouldn't create us with birth and death. But we will be without beginning and without end, just like our Father, just like our Creator. So the world that was created from a split mind, it created a world of birth and death, founded on the belief in scarcity, loss, separation, and death. Now, does that sound like God being perfection, God being eternal, God being formless and timeless, producing something after its own kind? No, it doesn't. It does not. It says that this world that was made from the mind that believed it's separated, it says that it created a world that is all about learning rather than about what was given. It's selective in its perceptual emphasis and unstable in all of its functioning. Does that not sound like the perceptual world experience that the body mind is engaged with? It doesn't sound like perfection or heaven as it's been described. And then it goes on to say, not only is it unstable, this world that was created by the separated mind, it's not only unstable in its functioning, but it's also inaccurate in all of its interpretations. Inaccurate in all of its interpretations. Wow. How incredible to be able to make such a world that is so opposite or that is so antithetical to what God is, to what perfection is, to what reality is. How do we do this? It's incredible what we seemingly was able to do. And then try to replace this world of perception. Try to replace reality with this unreality. That's what we've tried to do. And thus we've had billions and billions of bodies come and go, trying to find the light of day. All the incarnations, all the way through the beginning of time. Every man, every woman, every human that's been born in this dream of separation have tried to find their way to the unknown God. And we have made of this world and have tried to make of ourselves something that we're not. We even created religious systems to say this is the way. Only to fall way short of our reality. But here we are in 2022. And that which our ancestors was groping in the dark about, hoping for, seeing in the future, we are now standing in that place. And like Paul said, that which was hidden in time past is now been made manifest. It's now been revealed to us through many different means, many different sources. And the Course in Miracles is just one source. of that reality, of that course. And there's other spiritual guys that are out here now in multiplicity to help us wake up from this dream of separation, to come back from our prodigal journey. And so here we are. And it's great to be here. It's great to be hearing what we're hearing. It's great to be sharing what's being shared. Because faith comes by hearing, and hearing by every thought of God. It doesn't come by the conditioning of this world. It doesn't come by our traditions or our religious ideas, but it comes by that which is true, and true always. That which God is. God is the author of life. God is what? God is the creator of all things. God didn't make anything. God only created like unto himself that which is made. Out of miscreation can only be a temporary seeming experience that we are all experiencing, but it's not permanent. We are a fact of God. Who you are, who I am, we are a fact of God. And we are permanent. We are unchanging. We are unalterable. We're just like our Father, not in body or in time and space, but in reality. But because we are every thought of God, we can now stand in this place, be it temporal, or be it imagined. But it becomes real as we step into this space with the thoughts and the mind of God. And we make that which was unreal. We bring that which was unreal to that which is real, and it is consumed by that which is real. So heaven and earth have become one. And we are you and I, when we wake up to this reality, we become the substance of that reality. We become the substance of things hoped for. We become the evidence of that which is not seen. Yes, my life and yours. So on yesterday, we started and got really into this idea of Workbook Lesson 194. I place my future, or I place the future in the hands of God. I place the future in the confidence of my Creator. I place my future in the truth. I place my future in reality. It can be said all in so many ways. But we're saying what we're saying is, but there's only one reality. There's only one. There's only one Creator. There's only one God. There's only one life. There's only one being. And we place our full confidence in that, not as something that we're separate from, but that we're absolutely one with that being. That we share. The life that we are is a shared life that we share with our Creator. That we are indeed one with the only one. And so in the hands of our Father, we have no concerns, especially no bodily concerns, no earthly concerns. There's nothing to be concerned about. Because to say and to embrace the reality that we place everything in God is to say That it's not I, like Paul said, it's not I that lives, but it's that which God created that lives. Now, the life that we live, the life that we seemingly are engaged in this body identity, we live by the truth, by the reality of God's creation. And we walk away from every idea that we made of ourselves. And so to place our future is to say that our past, our present, our future is all one. It's all one and the same. And we ended up in paragraph 4. And I'll read it again. God holds our future as He holds our past and our present. They are one in Him, or one and the same. Because in God there is no time, there is no space. So if there's no time, that means there's no past, there's no future. There's only the present. There's only the now. And so they should be one to us also. When we wake up within our right mind, we understand that there's only the present, this present moment. That's all there is. There is no past, there is no future. There's only the present. And in each moment is the present moment. And so we remain in the present. And that's what David came to understand when he said in Psalms 16:11, for you Bible scholars, he said, in thy presence is fullness of joy and pleasures forevermore. David got a revelation beyond time and space. That the only reality there is that the presence of God is everywhere, and we are part of that presence. And in that presence, we are full, we are content, we are complete, we're whole, we're holy, we're righteous, we're everything that God is. And it is in that state of mind that there are pleasures forevermore. All of the pleasures of God are present, and we are having a direct experience of them in that mindset, thinking that way. And to think any other way other than the present moment is to take ourselves into a place that doesn't exist. And no wonder there's so much pain and anguish and tribulation and anxiety. They talked about it here earlier. It says that to take ourselves out of this place of reality of the present now is to give ourselves over to anxiety and hell and blackness of depression, thoughts of sin, devastation that is brought about by guilt. And all that happens in our mind. And then our mind reflects it back to us of the world, this object of experience that we're experiencing. It reflects these things back to us, creating sin, consciousness, guilt, and fear. That's the way it works. It's not an outside in reality, but it's an inside out. We are the projectors of our thoughts, of our minds, of our beliefs. And if our thought and if our thinking and if our mind and our beliefs are not in alignment with reality, the world can only show us back unreality. And that's why we see the devastations in the world. That's why we have experienced them in our own life, because we became a projector, not of reality, but of unreality. And so the world mirrored it back to us. Every pain, every heartache, every anguish, every moment of suffering, every moment of uncomfortability that you have ever experienced, it only happened because you first projected it out through your thoughts. Not just a thought, but the thoughts that you took it on up unto yourself. So if you take on the thought that you are something other than the light and the love of God, then in this world of duality, you will project that out. And the world will mirror it back to you, because the world is neutral. The world has no creative ability of its own. All the creative ability, all the God-given creative ability is within humanity. Animals have instinctive abilities. All the other living things, they have not only instinctive abilities, but they have built-in natural processes that can't be altered. But humanity, we're the only part of creation that has what? Creative abilities. And so we're able to create just like our Father. But if we entertain thoughts that are antithetical, that are opposite, that are opposed to our reality, what we will do is get involved with miscreation. And so instead of creating like ourselves, like our reality, we will miscreate and create something that is actually harmful to us. And in reality, we can't really pull that off. So we would have to fall asleep to do it in a dreamlike state. And that explains the world. If the world has been puzzling to you on how in the world could something so needy, how could something that is so temporary, how could it come into being? Well, we just explained it to you. This is not an act of God, but this is a miscreation of humanity. And I know that is a huge revelation. It was to me, but it set me at peace and put me on a trail and opened me up to say, okay, God, you said your ways, your thoughts, your ideas are higher than ours. Show me, teach me, share with me, so I can leave this state of confusion, so I can no longer be in this state of wonder, this state of confusion and conflict and contradiction, because there is none of that in you. So where does all of this come from? And this simple explanation helped me and put me on a path to where my mind began to not go counter God, counterclockwise, but my mind began to slow down, because a lot of the traditional ideas began to jump off of my habitual thinking in my mind that was spinning at one time because of the world and the way I understood it. Begin to slow down as I allow these realities to come into my thought processes, and begin to slow down. And eventually I noticed that my mind at one point kind of stopped, and it began to go clockwise. And this is just a symbol, not a reality. But in other words, it began to embrace the thoughts of God, my mind, as their very own. And that which I had been indoctrinated with, that which I had been conditioned by for years. that created this sense of sin consciousness, guilt, and fear was no longer in operation or no longer in domination. Not that the thoughts didn't still arise, but I began to not give them any value or any credence, because to me, I was coming to understand that it made no sense, that they were not the truth. They was only shadows of a bad dream. They was only shadows of a nightmare. And now, because I have waken up, I have recognized the truth to a degree. It put me on a path that, 32, 33 years later, I'm talking like this. 32 years later, I'm talking like this. 32 years ago, prior to 32 years ago, I wasn't talking in this manner. I was talking from a place of fear, guilt, and sin consciousness, because that's what I was indoctrinated with. But 32 years of working on renewing my mind, 32 years of being open to allow the Spirit of God, my inner God, to teach me, being open to the things that God was bringing in my life, to bring light into my life. I was open to it. I was not closed-minded, but I had to be willing to give up everything that I knew. I had to be willing to give up everything, all of the traditions that I thought were so important. I had to be willing to let God teach me. And you are here today listening to me because you are willing to question what you know is very contradictory, that is very questionable. That makes no sense at all. That make God out to be an unloving father. You begin to question these things. And now you find yourself here listening to these workbook lessons. And I'm here to say there is an internal teacher inside of you. There is a part of you that is awake, that only desire to know the truth, that wants to remember the self that you are. And that's what's resonating with you. So it's not about this physical form, Oliver, but it's about the one self that you and I share together with God. That's what it's about. That's what is being enlightened. God said that it's like a candle that has been lit. That our minds, when it is lit with the truth and with the light of God, there's an awakening. There's a rebirth that takes place. And it's the most natural thing that can happen to all of us, and it will happen to all of us at some time. It will happen to all of us in time, and we determine that. And what we find out when we wake up is that we've always been awakened, that nothing really changed. We remain as God created us. We're the innocent, holy creations of God. There's never been a break in our relationship. There's never been a break in our identity. It was only a dream of separation. Using this idea of a dream is a great teaching symbol. It's just a way to help us to say, okay, I was looking away all that time. Now I'm looking. I was looking away from the light. Now I just look to the light. You can say it that way. The world was calling me over here to look over here. Like the prodigal son. The world was calling him, echoing to him, come, come. There's something beyond your father's house. Till he finally said, yes, I'm going to see. And when he went to see, he ended up sleeping in the pig pen with the pigs. Because there is, in the symbol there, and the message there is there's nothing outside of God. When we see ourselves outside of God, when we try to experience ourselves outside of God, it's like a fish out of water. We're so uncomfortable. We're so lost. But when we realize that we need to go home where we belong, and when we do that, we come to realize that nothing really changed. It was only a wild imagining. It was only a prodigal journey, that I was not able to undo reality. Reality remains intact. And so we are not asked to understand the lack of sequence really found in time, but we are but asked to let the future go and place it in God's hand. And you will see by your experience. In other words, you will experience, just like we say about this course. The only thing that the course asks of us is to hear the ideas, the 365 lessons, the 365 lessons. They said it's 365 thoughts of God. Just hear the lesson. We know that some of these things are going to be startling. We know that some of these ideas are going to sound almost what they call blasphemous. Saying we're one with God, saying we have equality with God. But the course only asks us is to listen to the ideas, practice the ideas. It is in the practicing that we come to find out that they are true. It says, don't judge them, but allow the truth, allow the application of them to show you what is the light of day, what is true about you, because this is all about you. These workbook lessons is all about you and your rediscovery of your identity as one with God. That's what it's all about. It's all about you rediscovering your identity as the Christ. It's all about you rediscovering your identity as having equality with God. It's all about your finding the identity of all other living things in all humanity. That we're all one and we all share the same life that God is. It's not a different life. It's not a different being. You're not a separate self. It is the one self that we all share, including God. That's what we come to find out. And when we wake up to that reality and find ourselves still here, we also discover the purpose for us being here now. And we discover that our purpose, our function, our role is part of God's plan for the salvation of the entire world. And you're a vital part of that. I'm a vital part of that. All humanity is a vital part of that. Everyone has been called to that important role. It's not just for the few, the proud, or like they say, the anointed. God has called all of us. All of us are the anointed because all of us are the Christ. That's what the word Christ means, the anointed one. God has anointed what he has created. And it's you and me and everyone. It's just that everyone don't recognize the Christ that they are, the life that they share, the self and the being that is the same as their creator and every other person. There is no separation. That's the mystery that Paul said. It was a mystery. Not that God held this awareness from us, but that we were closed-minded to it. And now it's been made revealed. Why? Because there has been the opening And it started with Jesus. He was the first one that really embraced the truth of who he was. And just think, the world murdered him for that, because he stood up and said this truth. And now there are millions of Jesuses that have awakened to this reality. And that's on the planet at the same time. There's never been as many awakened people at one time on this planet doing the work of our Father. And so there's so much light. And that's why you see the shaking in the world. That's why you see darkness up in this game. That's why you see the illusion screaming. That's why you see the division and separation at an all-time high. Because he knows that it's just a matter of time that the light is going to consume the darkness. The light is going to consume the darkness. Why? Because only the purpose of God shall prevail in reality. Only God's purpose will prevail. And it's the purpose of God that all come into the knowledge of the truth. All. Excluding no one. And then he guarantees that all will come into the knowledge of the truth. It doesn't appear that way. But you can't look at this temporary world and see the light of day and see truth. It will only communicate to you that God is dead, that love has died, that there's the great divide, some going here and some going there. That's all that communication is still trying to keep us from the truth. And it even uses the name of God to communicate a lot of that in what we call religion. Fear-based theology is what I call it. But today is the day of salvation. It says, and you will see by your experience that you have laid the past and the present in his hand as well. When we place our future, our very life, into that which is already is. Because the past will punish you no more. Why? Because there is no past. See, guilt comes from the belief in the past that something happened in the past. And in reality, there is no past. Anxiety comes from a fear of the future. And there is no future. There's only the present. So he says, and the future dread will now be meaningless when you realize there's only the present. There's only the presence. So in conclusion, the lesson is telling us, release the future. For the past is gone. The past is already gone. Release the future, for the past is already gone. And what is present? See, when we release the future and we already know the past is gone, there's nothing remains but what? This present moment. This very instant, as you're hearing me, this very moment, and each moment, and each other moment, and every moment that we find ourselves in is only the present. There is no past. We release the whole idea of a future because we placed the future in God, which is present. So we have placed everything in this present moment, is what the lesson is really saying. And that God is the sustainer of our life in this present moment. God is the provider of our life in this present moment. God is the reality of who we are in this present moment. In every other moment. In every other moment. And so we find ourselves, like David says, that in his presence, there's fullness, there's contentment, there's wholeness, there's innocence, there's oneness, there's love, there's beauty, there's radiant aliveness, there's creativity, there's expansion. And so life takes on a whole new meaning when there is no fear of the past. There is no guilt of the past. There is no fear of the future. So there is no. So where is anxiety? Where is depression? It is all gone. Where is unforgiveness? It's all gone. We released it. Because nothing happens in this moment but love. So there's nothing to forgive. And so we have entered into, when we enter into this right thinking, we have entered into heavenly places. We have entered into the mind of Christ. We have entered into the mind of God. And now we don't perceive, but we know. We don't interpret, but everything becomes a fact. We are that fact. And it's unalterable. And so, release the future. This is our instruction. Release the future. And the past is gone. And what is present is freed from its bequest of grief and misery. We become free from grief and misery when we have placed everything in this present moment. He says, no more grief, no more misery, no more pain, no more loss. And that we are released from the bondage of time. See, where there's lateral time, you got past, future, present. That's in and of itself is not reality. That's an illusion in and of itself. And so when we release ourselves from that timeline, because we transcend who we are, is beyond a timeline. A timeline can't really hold who we are as infinite beings. This life, this little thing called life, that is seemingly a body experience, it can't hold us. It can't hold your reality. It said it becomes the instant in which time escapes the bondage of illusions, which it runs its pitiful or pitiless an inevitable course. That time is an inevitable course that it's going to be done away with. And here it called it pitiless. But we don't have to wait to the end of time to come. The end of time is when we wake up. Time ends as we knew it. Time ends in the moment that you wake up. You realize that you are in eternity now. You realize that you're in heaven right now, where there is no time, where there is no limitation, where there is no death, there is no birth. You realize when you really wake up that you are in eternity right now. And you always have been. That you've been on this journey without a distance. You would just sleep for a few moments and now you're awake. And you're no longer in the bondage of this world. You're no longer in the bondage of a mind that believes that it's separate, that is fearful and guilty and sin conscious. You're no longer a part of that. Then is every instant, which was at one point a slave to time. We were at one point slave to time. When you wake up, you're no longer slave to time. You're no longer bound by this world's limitation. You're no longer bound by your body identification. He says, so in every instant, Then in each instant, which was slave to time, has been transformed into a holy instant. So now your life become only a holy instant in every moment of every moment. You remain as God created you, outside of time and space. That's what Jesus meant when he said, I'm in this world. In other words, he was saying, I still have some influence here, even though I've waken up, even though I have what? I have been resurrected, even though I have been what? Ascended, even though I have transcended this world. He said, I'm in it. In other words, I have an influence here. My life, my seeming presence here. Now I'm out of a body, but I still have what? I still have influence here. I still have the power, even more power, now that I'm not in the limitation of a body. You see, now I can freely speak to everyone. I can freely I can freely fellowship with everyone, everywhere, at all time, because there is no time. And so when you and I have the experience of awakening, the experience of being born anew, the experience of being transformed and fully embracing our reality, we begin to experience only holy, complete, and full instances of living in eternity now. Eternal life is not something in the future. Eternal life is what was given to us at our original creation, and we never lost it. We just unrecognized it. It can't be lost. It can be unrecognized, but it can't be lost. And now that we have recognized, now that we have awakened, now that we are enlightened to the truth, we live in eternity now. And the Course calls it a holy instant. And each moment becomes a holy instant. Each tick of time becomes a holy instant. And so where is the time? So we're being transformed into this holy instant. Right now, as I speak to you, is a holy instant. It's a sacred moment. And every other time of the day is holy and sacred unto us. We just get to choose to give our mind to that, or to go play in the sandbox of this world. It's always our choice. And we know what we have chosen by our state of mind. We know what we have chosen by how we are feeling in the moment, what we are experiencing. What you are experiencing will tell you what you have chosen. And to choose to play in the sandbox, it's not a sin. To choose to play this world's game, it's not a sin. It's just an experience that you're having. But at some point, you realize, I don't want this anymore. This is too painful. This is too unreliable, unstable. This is too crazy. It's too insane what we're doing. And you choose again for your reality. And in that instant, your reality become a shared experience for you and for anyone else who chooses. So then is in each instant, which was slave to time, is transformed into a holy instant, when the light that was kept hidden in God's creation, the light that was kept hidden in God's children, in God's offsprings, in us, that light that was kept hidden, what was it hidden by? The illusions of this world. It was hidden by unreality. Our choice to play with it. It was hidden by the tiny mad idea of separation. It was hid by sin and guilt and fear. Sin consciousness. Notice now, because sin is not real. It was hidden by the illusion of separation, which is sin consciousness. It says, when the light was kept hidden in God's Son, is free to bless the world. Now are we free, and all our glory shines upon the world. That has been made free with us. When we wake up, the world becomes free. The earth becomes free. The atmosphere becomes free. I told you, everything changes when you really wake up. Everything changes. Everything changes. Inwardly. First, inwardly. Your direct experience changes first. Inwardly. Your peace returns, your joy returns, your happiness returns. And you are now on a path where you come to understand your purpose in life. Your function as the light of the world. Your role of demonstrating the God kind of forgiveness. We become students of who we are. We become lifelong, eternal students of studying ourselves by studying our Father. It's like a child that would look at his parents, and everything that he embraces, he gets from his parents. Well, what we do is we begin to look at our Father. We begin to look at the perfection of God, because that's what we are. And we begin to learn who we are. Not only in our way we think, but the way we shine, the way we show up in the world as the light of the world. We become students of our own reality. That's why Jesus put his latest in a course, because we need to study ourselves, to show ourselves who we are. We are free to share our wholeness, our completeness, our oneness with God and all creation. So, if you can see the lesson for today as the deliverance, it really is. Because this lesson, if you embrace this lesson, it is a lesson of deliverance. Deliver us from the what? From the clutches of illusions. Deliver us from our false self. It's deliverance from our false self. It's deliverance from the belief in separation. It's the deliverance from sin, consciousness, guilt, and fear, embraced in this lesson. By placing everything into the one thing. It says, if we could, and we can see, because our eyes have been opened. It says today as a deliverance, because it really is. It says, we will not hesitate to give as much consistent effort as we can to make this lesson be a part of who we are. That we are indeed sustained by the one source, the love of God, not by our own making, but we are sustained by the love of God. It says, as it becomes a thought that rules our minds. So we replace all other meaningless thoughts with this thought that everything is in the hand of God. This one thought, and let that thought become a part of us. It says, as it becomes a thought that rules our mind, as it becomes a habit in our problem-solving repertoire, that we begin to approach every problem with this thought, this idea that our life is in God's hand and all is well. Our complete trust, our complete allegiance is to the truth that God represents and the truth that He placed in us. That regardless of what's happening in the world, for me and my house, for me and my life, it's in God's hand. And so it doesn't matter what happens in the world. That God's truth is true, and it's true in me, and I embrace it for myself. And not only I embrace it for myself, but I embrace it for all humanity and for all the world to be free in this reality. So this thought becomes a part of the way I solve problems. So I don't have any anxiety about the future. I have no guilt about the past. I stand in this holy instant moment and I say, God is. Therefore I am. Therefore all is well. Regardless of the external conditions or circumstance or situations, doesn't matter. Regardless of how the children are acting, regardless of how the wife is acting, regardless of how the government is acting, regardless of how the religious community is acting, regardless of what's going on this side of the world or that side of the world, regardless of who decide to war and fight, regardless of all of that, I remain in this holy instant where all is well. You remain in this holy instant and you say for yourself, God is. All the other ways we've tried to solve problems, none of them have worked. None. All of the ways that the world has tried to remake God into His image, it hasn't worked. All of the ways that our religious community have tried to use fear-based theology to bring control into humanity. And by use of God, it has not worked. The only thing that works is the truth. Our only way out is the truth. That is true always. And it's the truth as Jesus spoke it. And it's the truth as the Course has written. And it's the truth as I'll stand in today. And I'm pointing you to that truth which is inside of you. It's inside of you. That's where God placed it. I'm only here to remind you. I'm only here to point you. That's why I say I'm your temporary guide. I'm your temporary coach. I'm your temporary in this world. But in reality, I'm your permanent self. I share the same self that you are. So I'm speaking on behalf of all of us. And that's why I speak the truth in love. It is the truth that sets us free. And who the Son set free is free indeed. So this is a way of quick reaction to temptation. This is the way we will use this lesson now to react to any way that we're tempted. To say, no, it's all in God's presence. I'm in God's presence where there's fullness of joy. God is, and therefore I am. It says, we extend our learning to the world And as we learn to see salvation in all things, so will the world perceive that it is saved. It is through our embracing salvation that the world come to experience his own. It's the way your brother will eventually come to experience his own or her own. It says, what worry can beset the one who gives his future to the loving hands of God? What worry can trap us now? Because we've given ourselves over to every holy instant where we and God are one. In every moment, that reality is recognized as the only thing that there is. It says, what could be set? What could worry be set? It says, what can one suffer when the knowing of themselves, when they know this truth? It says, what could one suffer? It says, what can cause one pain? Where is the pain? It says, or bring experience of loss to him. Where is the loss? It says, what can one fear? Where is fear now when you're thinking with the mind of Christ? When there's only one of us, where is the fear? And that one includes God. And it includes you, and includes everyone. It says, where is the fear now? He says, and what can he regard except with love? What can be now outside of the love that we all share? Nothing. It says, for he who has escaped all fear of future pain has found his way to present peace, or to present peace and certainty of care the world can never threaten. So when you find this reality that you are one with all that is, you are one with infinite intelligence. You are one with the wisdom of God. You are one with the same, very same self that God is. What can threaten you now? What can bring you pain? What can bring you loss? What can bring you fear? What can bring you anguish? What can bring you destruction? What is there to worry about? Nothing. God got you. God got us. He's always had us. We just walked away to look for something else, to only find that there's nothing else. And now we have returned. It's just that simple. We have returned into the hands of a loving Father who knew that there was nothing outside of himself. He already knew there was nowhere for us to go. There is nowhere for us to go. That's why Jesus said through Paul that God was in Christ reconciling the world, what? Back to himself. Because there's nowhere else to go. There's no other reality. There is no other reality outside of God, outside of the love, outside of that which God has created. He said he is sure that his perception may be faulty. Yeah, we're still here, and we still, we deal in this world of sleep and duality. Sometimes, we miss it. Our perception sometimes it's not right. Our interpretation is not right. We miss it. It says here, but we never lack correction. We never lack being corrected. We want correction. Why? Because what? We no longer want to be self-deceived. So we want correction. I said correction. I didn't say punishment. As fear-based theology will share with you, I said correction. Errors and mistakes are made to be corrected. That's what happens in a world of perception. From Christ's perception. we want to send people to hell because they make errors and mistakes. And that's impossible. The only hell there is the one that we make. And that's temporary too. The hell of our mind, thinking wrongly. That's what hell is, when we think wrongly of ourselves and each other. But we will never lack correction. We are free to choose again when we have been deceived, to change our mind when we have made mistakes. It's just that simple. To change our minds once we've made mistakes. And that's what we have now. We're standing in this grace. And so that's what we have learned. When we make an error, we just we correct ourselves. We correct ourselves. That's the way it should be. Place, then, your future in the hands of God, for thus you call the memory of him to come again, replacing all your thoughts of sin and evil with the truth of love. Think you the world could fail to gain thereby by your awakening? Can the world fail by your awakening? No. And every living creature not respond with healed perception because of your awakening? Absolutely. This is the impact that your awakening have on the world. This is the impact that your awakening has on every living creature. Everyone gains by your awakening. Because when you wake up, it's like God waking up. And your awakening is all encompassing. Remember, you share the same self that God is. It says, who entrusts himself to God also place the world within the hands to which he has himself appealed for comfort and security. Our awakening places the world in comfort and security. See, this is the impact of our true identity. This whole world is being what? It's been fashioned by our thinking. And now that we are awakening, the world is getting what? Healed along with you. It says, he lays aside the sick illusions. That's what we do. That's what being transformed means. We lay aside sick illusions of the world along with of ourselves and offer peace, not only to the world, but we offer peace to ourselves. We offer peace to our neighbor. That's what it means. That's what Jesus meant when he says, what? Peace on earth, goodwill towards man. It only happens in the awakening. Now are we saved? Indeed. Now are we restored back to our original state of being? That's what salvation means, to be restored back to your original state of being. It says, now are we saved indeed. In every deed that we do, we display this light that we are. That's what it means to be saved indeed. Freed indeed. He that is freed indeed in every deed that you expressed. For in God's hand we rest untroubled. Notice now, this is our experience now. In God's hand we rest untroubled. We rest sure that only good can come to us. So there's no expectation of bad. There's no expectation of harm There's no expectation of loss, of scarcity. We're in the hands of God. We're in the holy home of God. We're in the heart of God. God takes care of us. Like we said on yesterday, look at the lilies of the fields. Look at the fowl of the air. God take care of those things, man. What so much? How so much will he take care of his own self? We ought to be ashamed of ourselves, but we don't need to be ashamed. But it's really comical when you look back on how we was trying to make our own way. It was foolish. And all the time, God's reality had his heart wide open, waiting for us to acknowledge. Like he said, acknowledge me in all your ways, and I will direct our path. Don't be wise in your own conceit. No, there's no shame in reality. There's no guilt. There's no judgment. No, we are absolutely innocent and whole and complete. It says, if we forget, we will be gently reassured. If we accept an unforgiving thought, it will be soon replaced by love's reflection. And if we are tempted to attack ourselves or anyone else, we will appeal to our Father who guards our rest to make the choice for us that leaves temptation far behind. Lead us not into temptation. That's what this means. But deliver us from all the evil thinking, from all the illusions of this world. That's what he meant in what was called the Lord's Prayer. No longer is the world our enemy. We have no enemy. We have no opponents. We have no competition. There is no inferiority. There is no inequality when we think in rightly. We are only the light. All this transcends the world we made, the world of politics, the world of business, the world of sports, the world of art, the world of science, the world of community as we know it. This is what we're talking about. It transcends all that. It transforms all that. Now that you are awake. And now we step out into the world. We show up in the world as the light of the world. We show up in the world just like our Father, with no darkness in us at all, no alternative motives within us. We're only here to share the good news. We're only here to remind our brothers and sisters of who they are. We are indeed the ambassadors of Christ. We're indeed representing our reality and your reality. We are here to set the world free. And we're happy to do it because we were once in bondage and in chains and in a sleeping state, just like the world. But now we have awakened. And no longer is the world our enemy. For we have chosen that we be the world's friend. Oh my goodness. What a way to be. What an idea to share. What a reality to embrace as your very own. I just sense in this moment that there's someone that's listening and pondering what's been shared, this lesson. could be startling. But know that you are in the right place at the right time. Jesus said this kind of communication, when we communicate the truth, it's like a man that went out on a far journey looking for a great pearl, and he found it. And it was a pearl like none other. In fact, he was willing to give up all that he had to possess that pearl. And so he did. And that's the moment, that's the holy instant that we all come to, where we say there must be a better way than the way I've been taught, the way I have learned, the way I've been conditioned by this world, the way I've been thinking about myself and about each other. There's got to be a better way. This is insane. I know. We all know. And so today is a turning point. This lesson is one of the most critical ones in this whole 365 lessons. To place your complete existence into the only reality there is. To accept the fact that if you exist, and you know that you do, why? Because you're conscious and that you are aware. To place your very life and the truth that God is your very life. And so you share this one life, this one self, this one being, this one love with the only thing that is, the only thing that is eternal. And it's not a great leap. But it only takes a little willingness to say yes to the truth that is true always. Say yes to yourself. No one escapes making that choice. In fact, the Course says God guarantees that everyone will make the choice for truth eventually. And you might say, well, look, I know this and that, so they didn't make the choice. Well, there is no they. There is only you. The choice is yours. And it's the most natural thing that we can do. It's choose the light. Choose reality. Choose the truth that is true always. That you and God are the same. There's no difference. That your very existence, your very consciousness, the mere fact that you are conscious and aware, you know that you exist. You're absolutely sure about that you are. That's why you always, without even being taught, you say, I am this, I am that, I am. What you're saying is, I exist. I have an awareness and a consciousness. It's not my own. And you realize that it's not your own. It's the one that we all share. But we've been taught that, it's an individuated consciousness. It's an individuated awareness that belongs to me as an individual, separate from my God and from everyone else. And that's where we go on the prodigal journey. The pain and suffering and disappointment in this world. This world can't fulfill you. You are an eternal being. Solomon proved that. Y'all know about Solomon. He was the richest man that ever lived. He had more money, more people, more possessions than any other man ever. These guys now that are billionaires and trillionaires, it doesn't even come up to the beginning of what Solomon owned given his time. And Solomon came to the end of his life and said, well, it's all vanity. When you realize that this world is an illusion, this world is not the real home, this world is just a distraction to keep you from the knowing of yourself. When you realize that at the end of all of this, after you've built bigger barns, after you've rented additional storehouses to put all your possessions in, but you come to a point in your life where you realize this stuff can't go with me. This stuff won't do me any good once this particular incarnation is over. It begins to lose its meaning. The thing that you put all your stock in, it begins to fade away and lose its meaning. And that it becomes depressing. All that God uses to wake us up. There's no judgment. There's no condemnation. There's nothing to be guilty about. There's nothing to, feel that you committed some, unpardonable crime or sin. No, you just fell asleep and played with the toys. And at some point in your sleep, you said, I want to wake up. You heard the voice. You heard the voice of truth waking you up. And that's what we all go through. Nobody is exempt from that experience. And it's okay. It's the most natural thing that should happen. And listen, some of us, including me, we've lived 1,000 lifetimes. We've been dreaming a long time. Not in just this incarnation, but others. But it's in this incarnation. It's in this life. It's in this moment. It's in this holy instant that you are making this decision that, hey, look, I want to get off the hamster wheel of the ego thought system. I choose God. I choose reality. I choose for my real self. Just that simple. And there's no payment. There's nothing. I mean, because it was just a dream. It wasn't real. In this lifetime, in this moment, you make a decision to say, hey, look, I'm going home like the prodigal son. I'm going back to my father's house. That's basically what happens. And we wake up and we realize, wow, I'm still in my bedroom in my father's house. I was dreaming, man, that I was this, I was that. I was the judge. I was the president. I was the wino. I was the crackhead. I was the prince. I was the athlete. I was the musician. I was all these different things that we see, all these different expressions that we see in the world. They're all part of the dream. And so we've been all of that. That's why you can recognize someone that's dishonest or someone that's not being sincere, or you can recognize, how you say, well, it takes one to know one. Why? Because we've been all those things. Everything that your brother has been, we've been that. We've been the king and the pompous. We've been the president. That's why you can look at our presidents and say, hey, there's something ain't right with this president. Why? Because you've been that. You've been everything. Why? Because there's only one of us. So every life lived, every experience, you've experienced it all. So don't think you've been deprived of anything. Maybe in this lifetime, you might be what they call a middle class. But in the previous lifetime, you could have been what? An oil magnate. You could have been the richest guy on your block. But it does not matter. None of that. All that's past dreams. And we've learned here that doesn't matter. Only thing that matters is in this holy instant moment right now. where we choose once again, and we choose our reality. We choose our wholeness, our innocence, our oneness with God and all living things. We realize that everything that we had constructed, we deconstructed. And we live from this place of deconstruction. We live from what? This place of center. We live from this place of oneness. We live from this place of love. And we still realize, hey, I'm still here. And God said, well, yeah, you're still here because there's work to be done. And the work to be done is to be the light of the world, to be the light in your world. There's so many in your world, in your community, that are still suffering and laboring under a false identity. There's others in your community that are laboring under sin, consciousness, guilt, and fear, laboring under the laws and the mores of this world, of our religious community. They're saying you got to do this, you got to be that, you got to give this, you got to do that. God requires this. You cursed, you this, they're cursed, they're going to hell. All of that. I know all of that you're listening to and saying, how can God be this way? Well, God's not that way. How can God be so schizophrenic? God's not schizophrenic. How can love be so, like they say, a two-edged sword? God will bless you, then he'll curse you, he'll hurt you. That's not coming from right-mindedness. That's coming from fear-based theology, man. And you can walk away from that by walking into the light of your oneness with the entire universe. Walking in the light of your oneness with all living things. Walking in the light of your wholeness and your completeness, your holiness, that you are the holy home of God. Yes, you can do that. And we are doing that in this series of study out of the book of A Course in Miracles and all 365 lessons that we are embarking on. So thank you so much for listening to me ramble, but I think it's necessary. I think we need to hear more of this. There's so many that need to be set free from their own self. There's so much joy and happiness and tranquility. There's so much more to know and experience about your true reality. So continue to join with us. We love having you here. And until tomorrow, place all of your life in the reality of God is. Thank you.